So touching a little bit more on technology, are there emerging technologies that you view as especially promising in their potential to create and better build sustainable environments? And which technologies are more hype and you view as lacking real potential?
Well, I was going to say smart building, but sorry. It's really interesting right now. I mean, with Moore's law, I love that. This idea of computing power, and there's more scientists in the world, and this whole idea that technology is emerging faster, and certainly buildings can now benefit. It used to be so expensive to put instrumentation in buildings, and that cost has come way down through the cost of computing coming down. And so even in buildings that don't do any capital infrastructure, if we can attach smart devices to the building to pull information out, the one thing that we do have is an aware population. And certainly an owner would want their utility bills to go down, and the operator. But the occupant as well. Most of our building occupants will act greener if they can see their result real time. And so smart buildings is one big opportunity for buildings today that does not necessarily need the same kind of capital infrastructure that has a lot of issues.
So in terms of technology, I think both, if we're talking about building energy use and efficiency, I think so a combination of the smart, cheap, ubiquitous controls, which is a very interesting one, combined with the quickly falling price of solar panels and the quickly falling price of storage, I think actually leads to a very interesting sort of point in 5 years or so, where a lot of this stuff actually will be very economic, and we'll be able to put together an entire system that gives you a net zero building that is actually a lot cheaper than it was 5 years ago. There's also some interesting heating and cooling technologies that are just coming into commercialization now that take this kind of step change in efficiency, so 50–60% more efficient as opposed to just incremental. I don't know if you guys may be more familiar with some of those HVAC technologies.
Well, no, keep going.
In some ways, clearly technologies make a big difference, and the falling cost of existing technologies and potential new, more exotic technologies are all important. But I think in many ways, the bigger challenge in the space is the system and incentive and financing capital and behavior challenge. So, I mean, technologies are great, and they will definitely make all of this easier, but I think you get a lot of this stuff by addressing social employment issues and those system issues, financing issues, ahead of any new technology coming up.
There are some that are over the horizon where if we talk about them, we're just sort of placing bets in the face of a lot of uncertainty. But stuff that's there right now, that it should be workable. In terms of intelligence in our building, we've got across the street at the moment a weather station that tells us what the external temperature is, whether the wind's blowing, and whether or not it's raining. Inside the building, we've got a sensor that tells us how much carbon dioxide is accumulated and what the internal temperature is. A really simple algorithm down in the brains down in the basement of this place will tell you whether the window should be open or not. And you may not agree with the brains of the building, and you can override it, but you can only override it for a half an hour when the building reasserts itself. You have to override it again because it wants to go to perfect operation. And that's not really sophisticated technology. These are simple sensors that have been around for a century. If you're talking about the energy efficiency of things, there is nothing that competes with Moore's law, I don't think, in the world. And the average American recharging his iPhone per year spends 38 cents a year. The battery in your iPhone is 5.1 watt hours. It's nothing. And it does all of this stuff for you, and even more now. You want to stream a movie from Netflix on your new Apple Air, it draws 12 watts. I mean, so that whole thing has made buildings much more efficient inherently just by buying sensible stuff. Moving to LEDs, suddenly you reduce your lighting. Moving to daylighting if you're constructing something new, suddenly your bill becomes effectively zero. If I were trying to figure out the ones that I think are a little bit of a sham, and I will alienate people in this room I know with these choices, but I'm a regimented person. That's what I was asked. I think there's very, very little role in modern urban areas for rooftop wind turbines. It just doesn't produce much. The power from a wind turbine goes up with the square of turbine size. That's why you see these giant things out there in very windy areas. Even in Chicago, rooftop wind turbines are a way to say, this is a green building, but its role is more akin to a neon sign than an energy producer. The one that will be more controversial, really, is the one that everybody loves. In the Pacific Northwest, again, this is a regional difference. They're valuable in other places. But here, I think the green roof that covers an entire roof is kind of silly. And it basically turns into 6 inches of wet mud for most of the year. The insulating value of wet mud is not terribly high. You can use it if you're recycling your gray water, but that doesn't require an entire rooftop. And we're going to be doing that. We have something we call a green roof, but it's on the 3rd floor over on the side of the little plateau. But the most valuable thing you can do with roofs, in my view, every place, is have them unobstructable toward the south, ideally with a little bit of an angle to them to normalize it, and put photovoltaic arrays all over it. The best power source in the world.
Doug, Rob, any others that are no-goes in your book?
Well, there's certainly, this is maybe not directly answering your question, but there's this idea about integrated design or integrative design where any one idea is incrementally important, but together the ideas can be much more powerful than any individual. And also this idea, are we going to build buildings to use the same amount of energy? We're just looking for renewables to give us our way out so that we can keep our current lifestyle of how we occupy buildings. So I think, you know, the technologies out there that change behavior are a huge, important piece of this, even for how, you know, the Bullitt Center, you know, the whole building and how the facade is intended to be part of a better environment for people, but also to lower the energy use on the building. Right now, we're part of a team chasing a national competition around what does a building of the future in 20 years look like in the Seattle area. And actually, you know, today we want to put up these really big buildings, and then we don't have much roof area for a solar energy. And then, of course, when you put up a big building, you're going to want to see out in the way we do today, and so on. It was really interesting to think about buildings of the future in Seattle are probably 8 stories, and there is some maximum that you can build with today's technology, and then maybe the building doesn't use all the site, and in the future you're adding more building as you can generate more power and as new technologies come on. So I think in our world, we're kind of the boots on the ground. We work in buildings today. We're kind of not so much into which technology, because that will change over time, but this whole idea of how do you change what we're trying to solve and then applying technology holistically is part of what we're doing. Oh, and the other idea, we're thinking about putting a wind turbine on our building, and then on another building we're going to put some solar panels so we can turn the wind turbine just so we can get the marketing effect.
I was down in Portland, and I see Vestas doing that pretty well, so that's good. So speaking about lifestyle issues and how people perceive, you know, sustainable development, how can Seattle better reconcile its inclination toward environmental consciousness with its anti-density streak that can often clash with new, more environmentally friendly buildings?
I actually thought that the latest comment, I'll just say this quickly, but I think you kind of addressed that a little bit, which is that it's not that you want, you know, hugely dense, hugely tall, urban core buildings. The ideal for sustainability might actually be a much smaller building, which maybe addresses the need for sprawl. And I've only been here 5 years, so I don't fully understand all the nuances of that. But you know, that's one thing that I just see of that.
So an example, in Denmark, what they did is the government, federal, came in and said a city, your current city limits, the city can't expand that.